My name is Caroline, and I'm 29 years old. I teach at a school, which means long days filled with lessons and paperwork. Before last year, my life was simple but lonely. I lived alone, had no boyfriend, and spent most of my free time visiting my elderly mother in her village. Work consumed me, and exhaustion became my constant companion. Then everything changed when Stephen arrived at our school. Stephen was 27, tall and handsome, with brown hair and grey eyes that seemed to light up whenever he smiled. Everyone adored him because he radiated warmth and kindness. I never imagined someone like him would notice me. I'm ordinary, not particularly slim, and I don't dress in fancy clothes or have stunning hair. Yet Stephen started seeking me out. He greeted me every morning, asked about my day, and made me feel seen in ways I hadn't experienced before. One afternoon, Stephen offered to drive me home. As we talked during that ride, I discovered how easy conversation flowed between us. Soon it became routine. He'd bring me coffee, sit with me at lunch, and we'd share stories about our lives. I found myself looking forward to each day, counting the hours until I'd see him again. When Stephen invited me to the movies one weekend, my heart soared. We watched a film together, then walked for hours under the evening sky, talking about everything and nothing. I believed maybe he felt the same way I did. But then came the confession that shattered my growing happiness. Stephen told me he was married. The words hit me like cold water. He'd never mentioned a wife, never wore a ring, never given any sign. He explained he'd been married to Adeline for 5 years and they had no children. According to him, their marriage was empty. They shared nothing in common, spent little time together, and had drifted apart. He said I made him happy, that being with me felt natural and comfortable. I didn't know how to respond. I cared deeply for Stephen, but the thought of being the reason someone's marriage crumbled terrified me. Days passed in confusion. I questioned everything. Why would he want to spend time with me when he already had a wife? What was I missing? Then fate intervened at a grocery store. As I walked through the aisles, I heard Stephen's voice and spotted him with a woman. She was breathtaking, tall and elegant, like a fashion model, dressed in expensive clothes. They were laughing together, looking genuinely happy. My heart sank as I realized this must be Adeline. I left quickly, not wanting them to see me, and spent the night wrestling with my thoughts. The next day at work, I couldn't pretend anymore. When Stephen smiled at me as usual, I told him we needed to talk. I explained that I'd seen him with Adeline, that they looked happy together, and I couldn't understand why he was spending time with me. Stephen insisted he wasn't happy, that Adeline and I were different, that I made him feel alive in ways his marriage didn't. But I knew I couldn't continue this way. I told him I needed space, that he had to figure out what he truly wanted. If his marriage was broken, he needed to address it honestly with Adeline, but I couldn't be the other woman waiting in the shadows. Stephen looked pained, but accepted my decision. We said goodbye in that park, and I walked home feeling both heartbroken and proud of myself. I knew I'd made the right choice, even though it hurt. The days that followed felt strange and empty. I missed Stephen, but I also felt a quiet strength growing inside me. Then, one afternoon, as I left school and walked through the park, someone called my name. I turned to see Adrian, an old friend from college I hadn't seen in years. We embraced and caught up over coffee. Adrian had become a doctor and recently moved back to the city. Unlike my time with Stephen, everything with Adrian felt uncomplicated and honest. We started meeting regularly for coffee, movies, and long walks. With him, I never felt confused or uncertain. I realized I'd stopped missing Stephen entirely. Nearly a year passed, and Adrian and I grew closer. Then, one Tuesday, I decided to surprise him at his favorite cafe. When I walked in, I saw him sitting with a beautiful woman, laughing and talking intimately. Old fears rushed back. Was history repeating itself? I left without approaching them, spent a sleepless night tormented by doubt, but decided I needed to trust what we'd built together. The next evening when we met, I gathered my courage and asked him directly about the woman. Adrian looked surprised, then smiled gently. He explained she was his cousin Dorothy, newly arrived in the city, and he'd been helping her settle in. Relief washed over me. I'd learned from my past, but I also learned not to let fear poison something good. That evening, I told Adrian about Stephen, about the complicated relationship, and how I'd chosen to walk away. He listened without judgment and thanked me for my honesty, promising we'd always be truthful with each other. Months later, during one of our park walks, Adrian stopped and looked at me with an expression that made my heart race. He said he couldn't imagine his life without me, that I brought him joy every single day. Then he pulled out a small box and asked me to marry me. Tears blurred my vision as I said yes. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I realized my journey through heartbreak and confusion had led me exactly where I needed to be. I'd learned to value myself, to make difficult but necessary choices. And now I was beginning a new chapter with someone who truly cherished me. Sometimes the wrong paths teach us how to recognize the right one when it finally appears.